Hello Little Ravens, I'm Kate Fayback and I'm the current project manager for 10173 Ravonics Gemini. This is going to be the first installment of many where I just kind of go over the engineering notebooks and the ins and out of engineering management for specifically FTC. Starting off, you'll want a good cover for your binder. It should be something that ties in both the theme of your team. For Ravonics Gemini, it's really kind of space or flight themed mixed in with a lot of pink. And then this year's Star Wars theme. So something that takes some of their promotional design and makes it your own. Next is the business report. You'll want to have this in your front pocket of your binder. Make sure it's in just a really nice file holder so it's easier for the judges to access and use. The first actual document in your binder should be the team summary. It's basically what sums up your team in whole and really shows what you want the judges to see about your team. Basically, it's the too long didn't read of the engineering notebook. Next, you'll want to have your table of contents. It'll just outline really for the judges what they will be seeing within your binder and what they should be looking for. The first section I put in the book is the team section. Now this section has basically an overview of your management skills and being a team in general. So start off with the team structure, kind of show what your sub-teams look like and all of the reasons why you chose that. Next are the bios. You'll know these from last year. It's just the exact same thing, kind of who is your team, pictures of them, all of that kind of great stuff. Next is strategy. What is your strategy for the game? Just kind of let the judges know where your mindset is when you're actually competing. Next, this year we had a documentation contract, so we knew everyone was filling out documentation on the days that they needed to. I'll also have another video on documentation later and kind of how to keep everyone incentivized for filling it out and what is the best way and the best information to be gathering. And then lastly, I had team documentation. I handled this single-handedly as the project manager. It was any days where we didn't really split up into sub-teams, but just worked wholly as a team. Next is the fundraising section. I started off with a brief overview of what we did for fundraising during the year, and then kind of just a spreadsheet of all of our expenses, where they're going. I think the best thing the judges are looking for is basically transparency as a team and for us to see that we're actually really being able to handle money and handling being a cooperative team in general. So we also put all of our purchase request forms and just kind of just talk about and show the judges how you handled money, how you handled the budget, and basically how organized you were during the year. Moving forward is the engineering section. It starts off with a design review of our finalized robot, just kind of showing both the CAD design and the final robot design from a different angles and just kind of showing the judges what you're working with. We then did a brief explanation of each of the parts of the design and just kind of what they did and why we used them, and then labeled them over here with the CAD design so the judges actually knew what they looked like. With the engineering section, it's also technically split up into the 3 sub-teams of mechanism, chassis, and programming for this year, and I'll do a separate section on each of those, just so you kind of know what we did for those and how to make those stand out. So starting with the mechanism section, this is probably our biggest section just because we had so many different prototypes and designs that we tried out that we decided the best way to show the judges how much work we did was just to show them all the different failures that we had, basically. So we had a design review for each and every prototype and design that we used. So this is basically our X-Rail system. We started off with a CAD design just to show them what we were thinking of and just show it basically in the CAD rendering, and then different pictures of how it was made or different components of it, such as the pulley and X-Rail system. Then on the back, we talked about the pros and the cons of each part of the robot. So on the X-Rail, we just kind of wanted to show the judges why we used it or why we didn't decide to go with a certain design. And then this year we did have a teammate that actually really liked physics, so they decided to do a bunch of calculations and just models and actually test specifically with the surgical tubing to just kind of show the judges why the robot was working the way it did or why a certain design wasn't working as well. And then we did that for every part of the robot. So we have a lot of these within here. Don't feel like you have to do all of this, but it's definitely some extra work that does make it look better and really shows the judges how far you went with the engineering design process. But even looking at this one, they don't have to be super complicated designs, but just really showing off where your mind space was. And in the back, I have the mechanism team daily and weekly documentation. Once again, I will do a video on this later, but this is just kind of what it looks like. I do recommend, and what I plan on doing in the future, is whenever they mention one of the names of one of the parts, I'm going to reference them back to the page of the design review just so they know where to look for more information if the actual documentation isn't giving them enough. Next is the chassis section. The chassis looks pretty identical to the mechanism, but specifically just for the chassis. So we have here with mechanism, but with the different kinds of designs and specifically the hand-drawn stuff, it's a little bit more directional based and whether or not the programming is actually going to work. So that was super interesting and something that we think the judges will like pretty well because it really shows how much thought we put into even the smallest details. So yeah, it looks pretty similar, and then the documentation for chassis looks almost identical as well. The final part of the engineering section is programming. Now, on the front of our programming, we have our control award information. Don't forget to fill this out. It's a really easy form to fill out as long as you're doing basic documentation throughout the year, and it's a great way to have kind of a backup for not only qualifying, but just another award in the end. Next, we did a weighted decision matrix for our autonomous and kind of explain what a weighted decision matrix is and what that led to us. Next, we'll have different explanations of our pieces of programming. So first we'll have autonomous, moving on to mechanism and chassis, just kind of showing what our programming looks like and basically what it'll do and what makes us unique from the other programs. This is also good to back us up for the control award. Lastly, we have our wiring schematic, just shows what is plugging into our Rev Hub and what we're really using in terms of electronics. And then finally, programming daily and weekly documentation, just so they have all of that. A section I added this year was the competition section. For this, we did a reflection of every single one of our matches that we did. So we started off, we did the scrimmage early in the year, and then moved on to our open house reflection, and then both of our meets. By doing this, we were able to reflect on both our ability to perform and our inability to perform during competition. It really made us focus in on what made us successful and what didn't, and allowed us to improve our design as is and show the judges how we were using that information. And then moving forward, we have our scouting information just to show it's basically just a print off of the Google form that we're using. But even still, anything that's really going to show the judges where our mindset is during the competition is going to show us more as a team, but also how organized we are. Next is the outreach section. Now, we did a reflection of each of the outreach events we did. Basically, just cover what did you do at the event, why did you want to go, why was it so meaningful to you, what kind of impact did you make on your community, what things would you like to improve into the next year if you plan on continuing. Do you want to continuing this certain outreach event, or do you not? Just different things that are going to show the judges both how you upheld gracious professionalism throughout the year and also spread the idea of First Tech Challenge and STEM education. The final section is the media section. We start off with the page that just kind of gave all of our social media handles, websites, places that you can find us for the judges to look for more information beyond just the engineering notebook. Then we gave basically just an overview of the kind of promotional devices that we used, a letter to parents wanting them to help support us at competition, certain things that shows what is FTC in the classroom, the different boards that we'll be using both at open house and then both our competition boards. And then lastly, we also ended with the media team daily and weekly documentation. And that's about it for media. I encourage doing a little bit more advertisement and being a little bit more heavy with the media next year. It's just a great way to spread awareness of FTC and specifically Ravonics Gemini. Some tips that I have for you that were really helpful this year is, first off, stick with the theme. Clearly our theme this year is bright pink. It just helps us stand out to the judges and makes us a little bit more memorable, but also keep your theme and organizational tools pretty constant throughout the rest of the binder. I tried to start off with a completely capitalized heading in black, and then our subheadings are all in pink. It just makes everything look a little bit nicer. Once again, stays with that color scheme, but it really shows the judges when you're moving on to a new section. Along with that, remember to keep up with page numbers. Page numbers are very annoying after a while, especially if you're constantly adding pages. But as long as you're updating it, it's going to make it a lot easier for the judges to navigate. For each section, I added a letter in front of it. So each section is correspondent to a letter, and then the page numbers are correspondent to those within the section. That means I don't have to change every single page number of the entire book every time I want to add something. Rather, just fidget with those within the rest of that specific section. I also recommend making your own dividers, whether they be pink or just something else. The dividers that normally come with mean you can't use the nice page protectors, which are really important because you'll be flipping through the binder constantly and you don't want your pages getting ripped up. So make your own so you can actually have these sticking out and the judges are able to flip through it better. But also the pink, once again, just makes you stand out and be a little bit more memorable. And frankly, I think it's really pretty. And then lastly, have a bunch, and I do mean a bunch of page protectors extra because you don't know when you'll be putting something new in. And frankly, sometimes I would just run out and have to stuff things into the binder, and hopefully I didn't lose anything, but who really knows? Just try to stay organized and on top of anything. And frankly, if you think it's going to be added, if it's a good addition to the notebook, put it in. Frankly, there's nothing wrong with an excess of information, but just enough for the judges to really get to know you and really show your engineering process.